Welcome back to In Conversation With, and this is Breaking the Silence. And this is where I bring on a guest and we have a conversation about your favorite topic and my favorite topic, UFOs, NHI, and everything that goes with it, which is a lot of things besides just metal ships, nuts and bolts, and black-eyed aliens. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Brian. I did it again. Martin. I had to think for a minute. Brian Martin, thank you for coming on our channel, coming on this conversation show, and telling us about your experience with this subject matter. Now, you are personally involved. You've had experiences. I know you've been through a lot. I did a little bit of reading about you, and you've been, like all of us, through hell and back with life in general. So if you would like to start by sharing a little introduction about yourself and about where you've been and where you're going, that would be great.
Fantastic. And thank you, Steve, for this wonderful opportunity. I really appreciate what you're doing and giving yourself a voice and a voice for others like me. Thank you very much. And shout out to Mary. Hi, Mary. I'm
You're very
author
welcome.
Brian Martin. Brian Martin, Between Worlds, A Life of Abduction, Addiction, and Awakening. And yeah, there's a lot between the pages there, but I plan on keeping this really true to the experience portion of what we have encountered. And I'd like to go ahead and start off with sort of like an end cap situation for you, because for both of us, I have good news. I've had a recovered memory that was not included in the book, and it is the earliest memory of an encounter. And I have the very latest encounter. I still have these encounters. I still have these happenings. I use the word abduction in my title because that was what my publisher wanted. I don't really like that word. I like contactee, just about anything else. I don't like to have a negative context to it. Most of my experience, though, left me with questions oftentimes early enough, but have been good for the most part. I don't feel traumatized by it. And today I feel very welcome and welcomed by these others. The first memory that I can remember when I was just 2 years old, Steve, I was meeting my grandparents on my father's side. And that's why this occasion is very memorable for me. And me and my little brother, we were put to bed in different rooms. I was actually sleeping with my uncle, who was only 2 years older than me. So he actually thought we were cousins. But I woke up in the middle of the night, and I'm not sure why, but there was, and I'm going to use just regular terminology here, a gray and that gray was very, excuse me, very severe in features. He wasn't. He had the large head and the black eyes, the wraparound and stuff, But he had a very athletic build,
Huh.
and to a 2-year-old, um, it was very disturbing. I kind of equated it to like a fairy tale monster, like a troll story of some sort. But he had a very severe features, in that his face was kind of pointy and had some strong bone structure. Uh, but it was a gray for sure, and he spoke to me because I don't think he was there for me. I think he was there for my uncle. And he looked at me and he said very clearly, just verbally, "Who are you?"
Huh.
And I just didn't feel like answering at all, and I was doing all I could not to wet the bed and my uncle beside me. And um, I was, trying to make sense of it in my little head as best I could. And I think he sensed that I was uncomfortable and just left the room. He just left the room, and I was thinking, trying to wake him up, but he was not responsive. And but it looked like he wanted to wake up, but he couldn't. His
Hmm.
teeth were showing, and he had a strained look on his face, but it looked like he just couldn't do it. And then the most strangest thing happened, Steve. I felt calm all of a sudden, a calmness that was out of nowhere. And I felt like whatever I couldn't make sense of it, that, however I couldn't fit it into my Sunday school teachings, or what I was seeing in fairy tales or not in fairy tales. This was unlike anything I'd ever seen or known or talked to or heard or anything. And all of a sudden it just was okay, and that I knew that I was going to be okay, and that everybody around me was going to be okay. And I was able to lay my head down and almost go back to sleep when he came back in. He came back in after I was calm, and he asked me again, "Who are you?" And I got a sense without the words that he wanted to know who I was to this family. There was obviously a family resemblance between me and my uncle. So I told him that I was daddy's boy. I didn't know how else to say it. I didn't have a huge
Mm.
vocabulary at 2, maybe 60
No.
plus words. And I said, "I'm daddy's boy. I'm dad's boy." And he's like, "Which one is your father? Which one is your dad?" And I'm like, "Well, he's the oldest." That much I knew. Dad was the oldest. And that seemed to satisfy him. And then he left me alone, and I was able to go back to sleep. But it happened so young. And the next morning, my uncle was like, "What? Somebody bothered you? Was it this guy? Was it this guy? Was it this guy?" So I have many uncles. I'm like, "No, this wasn't any of them. It wasn't
Right.
them." And then coming to the other end of the spectrum, the end cap, I was camping at a lake somewhere near the Continental Divide, and across the lake, a 30-foot to 40-foot round beam of light came down on the shore, on the rocky shore on the other side. You couldn't see what was emitting the light on top because of the contrast of light and shadow, but it just, boom, there it was, and it was strong and it was bright, and you could see everything like daylight over there underneath it. And I couldn't see anybody, and we were thinking, what kind of light setup is that? And and then me and my fellow campers were we begin to get this creepy feeling, this very strange silence around us. And I recognized it. I recognized that feeling. I recognized that silence. I recognized that preternatural feel of things coming. And I thought, well, I'm gonna lighten the load here. I'm gonna make a joke. So I told a funny story to keep my friends calm. And and the strangest thing happened again, Steve. If it was almost like whatever was over there was just listening, and voices carry over the water. They probably were listening. And then after I was done with my story, and that feeling was still there, but we were laughing and not feeling as anxious about it. And I heard this voice call across the lake, and it said, "Who are you?" And it was that right there, Steve, that I couldn't let go of. I had to reach back and find why that meant something to me. What was going on with that? And that light stayed on for maybe a total of 12 to 15 minutes. And then it shut down, and you never heard anything from them again. You never saw anything, but I did see plenty of lights in the sky that night, and it was a very
Mhm.
dark sky sight. So there was lots of beautiful stars out, and a very clear evening, and there was lots of I heard one person, a fellow camper, say, "Oh, would you look at that satellite?" That was not a satellite that he was
Mm.
seeing. I'm certain of it, but that's the end cap. That's literally the
Right.
beginning and the end of my experiences and stuff. Most of my experiences were when I was a child in the 70s, going well, well into the late 70s, from the age of probably around 10 on. And then there was another concentration of encounters in the 90s. And when I wrote my book, this was not the kind of book I was wanting to write. I was wanting to write a nice fiction. I was wanting to write a nice horror novel or a nice science fiction or something. But nothing was going to work until I got this out, Steve. This was something that I had to unencumber myself with. I had to get it down. And I have to tell you, all the way through it, I just had this sense of urgency that it just needed to be written. I needed to get it done. I needed to get it done as fast as possible. And I don't expect I'm ever going to make any money on it.
Oh,
I've
no,
invested quite a bit,
none of us
but
do except
I
Whitley
feel
Strieber.
like I've got my message in a bottle, and I've thrown it out there for the universe to do with as it will, and I have to be happy
Exactly.
with that. So
Exactly.
yeah, and there are things that happen to this day, and I've marked a few places in the if you would like me to read a few things that are
Sure. I just
to
wanted to
the
comment.
experience.
I
Sure,
just wanted to
please.
comment. Um, the whole part, so much of what you described when you were 2 years old, I don't remember anything at 2 years old. I dimly remember at 3 years old, such a figure looking in at me through the crib. It wasn't until I was 6 years old that the big stuff started to happen. But one of the things that I found interesting was the way that he left the room and then you felt calm. And I hear this all the time because they realized that it was too disturbing for you. And they don't have to be in the same room. This is my experience. It doesn't mean it's for everybody, but it's been my experience that they know how to get telepathically into you and put you in a state of hypnosis that calms you down, makes you feel very warm, very comfortable, and you could go back to sleep. I hear this over and over and over again. And then you describe the silence, and I know that silence so well. And with so many of my encounters personally, especially the one at 6 years old, that's what woke me up was the silence. I lived in San Francisco on 47th Avenue, and it just suddenly there was no sound except my breath. And then that's when I saw the lights in the room. And then you talk about the urgency, having to get this whole thing off your chest and making a book. And you don't care about the money. I get people saying to us all the time, uh, "Well, if you're writing a book, I'm done with you. I'm not. You just want to make a book, get rich and famous. Nobody gets rich and famous off the books. Whitley did, you know,
Bless his
and
heart.
yeah, but that was a one-time deal. He's never been able to repeat it, really. And because I'm very close to Whitley, we've been friends for almost 40 years now, and no one makes money off books or appearing on TV shows or anything else. with me, yeah, I wrote a book, but I also made a film and spent a lot of our own money, had a full cast and crew and everything, and did But Something Is There, which is on the channel in 2017. So I know what you mean about getting this off your chest, and it seems like we're still doing that. It's always going to be that way. This stuff doesn't go away; it sticks with you all your life. So I just wanted to make those comments, and you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. I agree with you. At 2 years old, this was a memory that was easy to let go because there was a lot of time between 2 and 10 when things really started rolling for me. I have an exceptional memory. My
me
memory is
too.
not photographic. Yours is photographic. Mine is not. Mine is long, long like the elephants, but not photographic.
Huh?
Not in the same way. Not in the same way. I've known people with photographic memories that could count how many nail holes were in a wall and never forget where their positions were and stuff. That's not me. My memory is long though. It is exceedingly long, and it always has been.
Can you
Um,
see
and
though? So
I'm sorry.
when you're describing the gray in the bedroom, can you see it still in your
Oh
mind? Can
yeah,
you see it?
yeah.
Okay.
He's the fuzziest of them because it
Yeah.
was such a long time ago. He is the fuzziest of them, but I do remember of all the grays that I've encountered, his was the most severe. He had a severity to his structure. There was all kinds though that I've encountered. Some had pot bellies, some were cute but scary, some were hybrid. Some uh, I've encountered uh, some that I call the angulars, and that's just my own terminology. But they're like grays except taller, much taller,
Hmm. Hmm.
and they're very angular in their features and in their bone structures, and they seem more mature also than the small grays, the ones that are three
I
to
hear
four
that
feet
too.
tall.
I
And
hear.
then there is, like I said, the hybrids. One of which I call TKO, the kind one, and he's one that I've had the most contact with throughout entirely, and he's got like a human being except with black eyes and close cropped white hair and kind of albino looking features. And then I've seen what most of the contactees are calling the Nordic or Palladian type, that they look very Nordish, blonde haired, blue eyed, very angelic countenance. Uh, I, there was one that was like, I just felt completely calm around him no matter what. And they had and their differences wasn't just physical, their differences could be felt in the telepathy as well, you know but like I said, I've marked a few things in the book here that I
Sure.
thought you would find interesting if you would like me to.
Sure.
And
Well, I'm sure that
here's
our
here's the
audience will
book
find it. Yeah, I'm sure that our
titled
audience
The
will
Life
find it.
of Abduction, Addiction, and Awakening. And I've got it marked right here for you, and I thought of you specifically when I was doing this. And it's my first sighting that I've marked here. It says it looked like the sun, and it really did. Um, that was also the summer my oldest cousin Bev took me out for a cigarette. Oops, a little bit. It looked like the sun. Sometimes small towns seemed abandoned, but in fact an emptiness of people. I crossed the street without an upward glance. There was no one coming. The ground went from sidewalk to blacktop, the curb and gravel. I stood in the corner parking lot of the Tasty Freeze, the only ice cream shop in town. A vast lot for such a tiny building, it also accommodated their 3-story spinning sign advertisement. It stood corner prominent on a single massive painted metal pole. Head down, I wound around it, taking in the texture of the smooth enamel paint, the gravel beneath my feet. And then I heard in my head, and you do not have to be alone anymore.
Hmm.
Ever, if I wanted, if I chose, was my feeling. The rain, this undercurrent of pattern nuance, floated into my consciousness. Not real rain. A tear fell into the dust by my shoe. It caught me unaware, so I stopped while hanging off the pole, thinking at first it was the beginning of some more weather. Then I knew the truth. I believed because believing is something I do. I could be taken. I knew it then. Another tear landed beside the first. So, if they would have me, I could be ready. I looked straight up and did exactly what adults always say not to do. I stared directly into the sun, golden red as if about to set. It swirled in molten colors of light infused mist swirling lazily about it. Bathed in deep tangerine surrounded by ivory mist glow, its beauty fixed me. I bowed my head, and after a long moment, eyes closed, imprint fresh, I knew the clouds had been overcast, gray opaque, and stretching from horizon to horizon in bubble patterns from earlier showers. A hint of texture in the buzz in my head suggested I was too near the pole, so I stepped off, distanced myself from that pole, and I found out later that at that time of day, um, because, well, I didn't find out later. It made sense to me that at that time of day, what I was looking at was something extraterrestrial. It was a little bit closer than what the sun would have been, um, like an aspirin in the sky. It was a little bit larger than that. And the sun was actually further towards the afternoon. It wasn't high noon at that time. And I tried to make sense of why I thought it was the sun because it really did. It looked like the sun initially. I thought it was, and then
Hmm.
I remember something that Stanton Friedman said once about MHD propulsion theory and how its behavior and effects conducting fluids within magnetic fields, how it can play mists and plasma. And I thought that sounds a lot like what I saw, and if I had to describe anything as to what it was that I was seeing, it would fit the Stanton Friedman, God rest his soul, description of it. But
Loved
that
him.
was
Really
my
did.
first encounter, and there was telepathy in those few moments. I felt like I didn't have to be alone anymore, and I have to tell you, I've not been alone since. I really haven't. I've never. There was at one point in a game where I thought, I wonder if this is ever going to stop. I wonder if this is ever going to be over. There was a few points where I was uncomfortable with it, and I kind of wanted it to stop. I kind of wanted it to be over. Um, but that didn't last long, and I actually feel very comforted to this day that I'm not alone. That I actually have these presences around me. I think they care about us all, honestly, not just me. I learned a long time ago it's not just a me thing; it's an us thing. I've always described them as facilitators, and I say this not because I know a whole lot more than anybody else, but I've had an awful long time to think about what's been going on with me, and this is just some of the conclusions that I've come to, that they are facilitators. They hear our troubles, they know what we're going through, they see what we do, and they would like to help as best they can, but at the same time, it's not their responsibility. It's our responsibility to take care of ourselves, isn't it?
That's right.
So
And the planet. They're not going to come and save us. They want us to save us. Because
yes,
if we're able to do that, then we have evolved to a higher consciousness which does not have any room for hate or war. It just has room for love of each other and the planet, which we clearly don't have a whole lot of right now. And it's just, yeah, they are facilitators. But aren't you also glad that as a result of this, you have paid more attention to everything that moves, whether it be on the
oh,
ground, the sky, or on the
absolutely.
wall, the stars at night, more interest in cosmology and our universe and all the possibilities that are out there.
Well, on
Um,
that note, I'm a sufferer of dyscalculia. It's like dyslexia, but with numbers only. And
Okay.
I've always had to think outside the box. I've always had to think outside the box to solve problems. And that's part of the reason why I think my memory is so astute, so long, is because of this. I've always had to adapt because of this, and more to the effect of what my contacts have meant to me. Indeed, I have paid more attention to my surroundings, whether it be consciously or subconsciously.
Yeah.
My poor husband, he's a fairly large man and stuff, and he was always wondering why I was blocking windows and doors with furniture and making life difficult for him to move around and stuff,
Huh.
And then at the same time, I have this childlike sense of wonder when I'm outside. I always, when I go camping, it's not just the surrounding area, it's the stars, it's the night, it's the look and
Yeah.
see these things, and I know when they're there and they know I'm there, and it's really, really uplifting. It's very wonderful.
Do you have a telescope?
No, I don't have a telescope. I don't like using telescopes. I don't like taking pictures. I like to record the moment with my eyes. I like to experience
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I don't want to miss a thing. I don't want something between me and them. I'm just that way. That's one time I took a camera outside with me. I kind of projected what I was doing, why I was doing. I thought, well, if I could actually get something to help promote the book, that would be great. I'm not normally my way, but they didn't show up. They didn't. They didn't show. They were like, no, no, thanks. You can
No,
have it all. So that was the last time I ever tried or attempted something like that. I'm really not into taking photos or looking through telescopes and stuff. Like I said, I just don't want to miss anything.
right. Well, the thing is, they show up when you're at a disadvantage. We've got people, I'm not going to mention names, but everyone will know who I'm talking about. And they're just on and on about how there's no proof about any of this stuff. Come on, people, you got an 8K camera in your pocket and you don't get pictures of what you're trying to get us to believe. No, we're not trying to get you to believe. We don't care if you believe it or not. At least I don't personally, but I know what happens. And when I was on the phone with Whitley Strieber that night and the big triangle came over, I had a phone right in my hand. It was 4K. Could I have got the footage? Probably. Did I think about it even once? No. I never wanted to take my eyes off it. And all I did was, while I was on the phone, is describe what I was seeing to Whitley.
Well, there's a certain amount of proof or burden of proof for both self and for others. You can try and capture an image if you want and call it proof, or you can know in your heart. I know for me, I went decades sometimes without seeing anything in the sky. Not lights, not nothing, and then all of a sudden, like recently, I see them all the time. They're all around, all the time, and I know that's because of my newly found openness and consciousness of it and stuff, and for me it's more real that way. I don't think if I were to take a picture I would be able to put it on the wall and be happy and satisfied with that as I am with my own experiences. And I think you're right about those they have every advantage. They have
Oh yeah.
absolutely every advantage. We are outgamed. There is no keeping up with them. Um,
No, and today, of course, it really doesn't matter how good of image quality you get. Broad daylight, there's a big metal object in the sky, there's a window, you can see beings looking out, which plenty of people have seen, and it's not proof of anything. Not
oh, and
anymore.
about Whitley, I only recently just listened to his audiobook. Just recently, I have just
Which one?
communion. Communion.
Oh, okay.
I've only just recently read that through listening and stuff. Here's something on missing time. This is the first time I ever reported missing time, and this was before
Okay.
the term missing time was ever known to me. So I wrote it that way. Um, this was also the summer my oldest cousin Bev took me out for a cigarette in her mom's car. It's not like we went driving or anything. Bev was just trying to bond since I was now a part of the smoking circle. When I inhaled, it made me sick and she laughed. After turning green, she softened the blow of my malfunction inhalation, and by softly admonishing me for doing it wrong and to let me have it back before you soak the filter. And then she played with my hair a little bit. Um, I then told her something that I would not repeat for over 40 years. I told her something funny about time, that I had missed an hour yesterday and 3 last Saturday. And this was very much in the 70s when I did not know um, Whitley's book hadn't been published yet. The term missing time hadn't been tossed around. That's just something that I did. And then I have here what I call, and when I wrote this, it was my remembered first contact, and it was an all telepathic experience. It was a complete telepathic experience, but it was for me the first contact I had. Within me, the emotion, I was listening to music, in my room as a kid. The emotion, the music alchemized into a state of blissful ecstasy as I gazed at the row of 4 glowing entities: yellow, red, blue, and green. Every time I closed my eyes, the 4 lights were there, like little suns in the dark. And yeah, and the formation broke into movement, graceful arch that transformed the flat plane of darkness into 3 dimensions. They danced with the music, growing and receding in spirals, yet never breaking order, forming a tilting horizon, column traced in light. I was a creative kid. I was an imaginative kid, but I would not have come up with that. At first, they looked like 4 little dots, 4 little stars out in the distance against my closed eyes while I was listening to music. And then, boom, they started moving and receding and turning. And all of a sudden, the space became 3-dimensional. And these are ones that I call, well, I suspect that they are what I call the 4. And I don't really have a description for the 4. I for some reason, have always had a blank where their description is. They're like the angulars in that they're tall. They have a kind of conical garb that's narrowest at the shoulders and coming down. Um, and they are definitely in control. They are definitely higher up on the hierarchy. And
Mm-hmm.
so do you have anything to think about that?
Well, I mean, when you're just driving conical, I mean, the closest thing that comes to mind with that are the taller grays that I see, which are painfully thin, um,
Yes.
and the heads are large enough, and the eyes are larger and large enough that I could see how some people may think that those are mantises, but uh, I've only I've only had one occasion where um, I finally saw a mantis, and it, it looked more insect-like, but I questioned
That's what
whether
I
or
was
not.
wondering about, because I'd
Yeah, I
heard you
question
mention
it.
that before, because I could see how somebody would mistake these tall, angular,
Yeah.
thin beings as insect-like,
Hmm.
but when I hear people talking about mantids and stuff, they're talking about something a lot more insectile, and that's what I get from you as well, is that you're talking about something a lot more insectile. These to me looked like large, as you say, painfully thin, uh, large head, large eyes, tall
Yeah.
grays,
I think it's perspective. I really do, because I got a second look while I was in meditation, and I've talked about this before in the show. But when I was in meditation, because we meditate in the morning before yoga, and darn if I didn't. I thought I was having a memory of it again. I was getting more information, more detail, but it was actually there, and it was at that moment when I was in that crowd of other people in the auditorium, and it was looking right at me, and it took me back to when I my first day in school, not my first day in first grade, and it wanted me to remember how I felt at that time, the sensations I had being in that room with all the other kids, and how different I felt. That was very important to it, and of course, I know Susie Hansen, and I've read her book, and she talks about the Manus types in there, and they seem to be the ones that are in the most control, the ones that calm you down, that has the most ability telepathically to reach you and calm you down. But the thing is, it's hard for people. And I heard another person who has these experiences, I forget his name now, describe this. And the thing he said that he had a problem with at first was that in our day to day lives, we have this mask, our face, our head, and people read us by our face. They don't read us telepathically per se. They have the ability, but they've lost it or it's not turned on anymore. Whatever the reason is, they can't sense the real you. And if they did, they would know everything about you. When it comes to these beings, they know everything you've done all through your life. Anything
I
they can get
definitely
access
feel they
to.
know me better than I know myself.
Exactly. And so people really feel uncomfortable, even violated as a result, but that's their natural state of being. They don't have wars because they don't hide anything from each other. They can't even do it. And that really struck me why we're having the problems on Earth.
Hmm.
And I
Absolutely.
think,
I found
and I,
my passage on the four
okay,
here. Would you mind,
sure.
Toby?
No, not at
At,
all.
at,
That's
at
why
this
we're
age,
here for you.
this is really good. At this age, I have not yet seen the ocean, but had I would have known that you hear and smell it before you ever see it.
True.
And I am being led to something, just such immensity, right down the hall. After being ushered from behind into a doorway, I am faced with the four. They are simply that, and yet not at all. I remember briefly looking at each of them and presenting myself fully as a child that I was. And when I say I am a child in their presence, it means to them I would seem so even if I were hundreds of years old. One cannot help but be themselves here. They are beings I suspect much about and know little of. Could they be the four dancing stars behind closed eyes? If so, which was each color? I dared not check their robes for this. Whatever form, here or there, they are a bit much to take in. In short, with minders, which is sort of like my term for the Greys.
Hmm.
They were my minders when I was being ushered here and there. Uh, though childlike, you know you are before those with superior intellects and abilities. With angulars, it's more of the same, but infinitely more mature. The four are in a class of such power and structure, or stature, excuse me, that it is difficult not to cower before them, being the largest entities I would ever encounter. I moved around them on the floor as if I were weaving through columns. Their dresses conical, falling from the narrowest point off of their shoulders to the floor, but differing in color and pattern. Their arms disappeared within the folds. There are few of their kind. As any outgoing youngster thrust before their elders, I smiled to greet them with my warmest hi, and then I shied away, preferring to move around until I could find a suitable spot to stand. In doing so, their features faded. The room made especially for them held no furniture. Even in silence, their telepathy had its own hum. I would delve no deeper than a probe of empathy, which comes naturally to children. One of the four bothered to show outward care, a personal interest, and in general, return my greeting in kind. It was only that thing that made them less alien. I was grateful and relieved for this small familiarity. The all encompassing, amplified white noise of the four was daunting. To maintain a comfort level, I found myself thinking of them as the very oldest of their kind, and the class they alone were contemporaries in. My suspicion is that the four oversaw many things, including any approval or dismissal of in depth contact, and acted as comprehensive liaisons to all beneath and beyond the immediate. The four now wanted to talk with me. And that was my section on them. That was the most descriptive that I could get about them. I
Well,
don't have a picture of them at all in my head. There's a purposeful blank spot there, and
huh.
I think it's out of respect. They asked me to kindly not try and remember, and I wasn't going to argue with them.
I can clearly remember up close and personal. In fact, when back in the 90s and I was working with Yvonne and going through hypnosis, I remember being on the table and the small ones are there, and they're doing their busy work. And then in she came, this big, tall one, real thin, and she would bend. I'm getting the chills now just remembering it, but
Sure.
she would come in and bend down over me and put her face right into my face and stare at me. And it just, I can't even, I can't describe it because it was so telepathic, but she was in me and taking control of me so I didn't panic and calming me. But I remember seeing wrinkles in the face, and when I felt she was very old. And when I did a sculpture of Whitley's communion bust, I've done several, and I did offer them for a while, but only for a short period of time. He remarked at the wrinkles I put in it and said, that's accurate,
Yeah.
that she's very old.
Yeah.
And so that sticks out to me, you explaining that. And I'm sorry I got a little weirded out
No,
there, but
no, no, no,
when
no.
you
You don't
remember
need
these
to
things,
apologize, Steve. I
yeah,
understand
no,
exactly where you're coming from. The four for me were very, very old and in a class all their own. My very
oh yeah,
first contact with a gray was when my very first recollection of being taken aboard, and I referred to him as the doctor, and he was a gray of small stature, and he was very old. He was very old. Would you like to hear it?
sure. And
Okay,
and then I got to ask you another question.
please. I was
Okay.
positioned by someone to stand before the group, the doctor, and uh, and uh, um, and I was standing before many of them. None were more mature or taller than the Angulars. All were very intellectual unsaleables with eggshell skin and huge onyx eyes that were eerily glossy yet held no reflections, lending them a surreal cartoon quality. I was told they would be my closest contacts, my minders, those who would usher me to the next whatever, and had differences that were more in variation of type, height being the main one, but also weight and features. After the first note, it did not warrant dwelling on, not their age or any of the rare or slightly varied racial integrations among them. The young accepted me, unlike the adults, and when I'm saying that, I mean adults of my world. And most were just my size. The smallest one, who would be the one I most frequently see, was actually my height. Spooky, but cute. I drew him from memory during this last week of writing. The minder, my fave, set his it set my scalp tingling after I drew him. And for many of my sightings had very strong, clear memories to them, like this one. I to be
Mhm.
able to see so many of them with, like I said, different heights, different shapes, different facial features, but we are different heights, different shapes,
Yeah.
different
Oh,
facial
absolutely.
features. They're
Sure.
supposed to have these differences. They're not all these clones that I think people have this conception of them being, but of course they have similarities. But there was also, like I said, amongst them some hybrids, that looked very much like a combination of gray and human. They were very, and I remember them very clearly. Not all of my memories were fuzzy or abstract.
Hmm.
But the doctor, for all of his age, had an alacrity of movement that was amazing. He was absolutely amazing as he examined me on the table. And he spoke to me both telepathically and verbally. And when he spoke, he actually seemed to have an accent, one that I couldn't identify until much later in life, because being a small child in Iowa, I didn't have a whole lot of contact with a lot of different kinds of ethnicities and stuff. But I realized that after growing up a little bit and having a little more experience that it sounded sort of Asian. It sounded, his accent was actually sort of Asian. Very strange differences sometimes between them. But go ahead and ask your question, Steve. What do you have?
Well, I was curious if you have any memories from childhood that you discounted that you thought were just a product of your imagination.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
There was one in particular at my aunt's house. And I think they were just trying to figure out what environment I would do best in. And I remember there being a sort of nebulous choice in my head of whether I would prefer darkness or whether I would prefer lightness, and not necessarily in the sense of morality, but more what I would feel more comfortable in a darker setting or a lighter setting. And I think my initial answer was light. And so they kind of tested that out on me at my aunt's house. I was in her living room, and I remember seeing a book there, and um on the coffee table, and then the the quality of the light within the room changed. I mean, it had a big, beautiful picture window. It was a gorgeous ranch with a big room with a big picture window, and the quality of the light changed somehow, though, and that book almost seemed to float above the surface of the table. And I thought, I'm something's wrong here. And I went ahead and I went through this little alcove, this little arched alcove, past the refrigerator into the kitchen where my aunt was, and then everything kind of went back to normal once I made that threshold move. And
You,
my aunt
you,
was not really. She was lovely. I loved my aunt, but when I was a kid, she really wasn't that interested in me. But she, she looked at me and she went ahead and kept doing her business and stuff at the counter. And after I felt okay, I went back out into the room. And again, as I transitioned that arched threshold, the quality of light changed again. And standing there in front of the picture window was a gray, and he held out his arms wide and smiled like, "Here I am." And I thought, no, 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 no. I turned on my heel and I walked back into the kitchen, and I sat down at the table, and I thought, that's crazy. That's nuts. That's crazy. I didn't see that. That didn't happen. We're not gonna pretend that's real. We're just gonna, sit here, and my aunt took an interest in me this time. She's like, "Brian?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know. I just feel better sitting in here for a minute." Uh,
hmm.
and
No,
she,
we're not supposed to share it with them
yeah,
for our own protection.
yeah.
Do you remember being? Well, let me put this
I
differently.
remember he looked disappointed when I walked away.
Okay. Do
I
you?
remember he
Do
looked
you?
disappointed, but I discounted it completely in the moment. I absolutely could not accept it. And the following scenes, by the way, happened in the dark. Everything else thereafter happened in the dark. Light didn't work, so I was always in dark rooms with a shaft of light over us and stuff. So I guess the decision had been made in that trial run. Didn't respond well to things in the open light. Let's go ahead and sequester him in the dark a bit. So
Were you ever told not to talk about what was happening between you and them when you were small?
no, my upbringing was my father was a bit of a sociopath. So I knew when to keep my mouth shut about anything. And we certainly weren't going to be talking about that.
No. Yeah.
Like I said, when I was with close family, and I was very close to my cousins back in those days, I would mention this or that at odd times, just between me or one of the other three of them,
Hmm.
and they were on my mother's side, by the way. They weren't on my father's side, like my uncle that I described earlier. But no, I had a lot of reasons. I was a lonely child. I didn't have a whole lot of friends.
That's
So I
typical.
had a lot of reason to keep my mouth closed at
Yeah.
certain. But I knew when to speak and when not to speak, and what was good at playing it safe and what wasn't, and stuff.
And you felt different.
Oh, it changed me. Um, Even when I couldn't remember the experiences of the nighttime world, I felt more experienced in the daytime world.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
felt more confident, more able, more aware. It changed me for sure, for sure.
Do you have any sense of a life or as as a consciousness before this one, before you were born? Do you have any sense of or recall of
Like a past life.
yes,
I always had
not
this one
not
feeling.
necessarily even a past life, but just being conscious and
When I
being
was
part of
5
something
years
else.
old, I remember saying very clearly to myself, "I'm going to do good this time. I didn't know what that meant. I only knew that in this life that I faced before me, I was going to do good this time. So that was very much a thought very early on. And I know for a fact that children don't have these thoughts for no reason. I
No,
feel that there is a reason for that thought. Um, I have not done anything in the way of hypnotic regression, whether it be past life or for this purpose. I've been watching your show more recently of late, because I think I might give Yvonne a call. That was a great episode. Um,
or
but
or Jerome. Did you
or
watch the one I did
Jerome,
with Jerome?
I
Yeah,
would love contact information for them, please.
he's in
And
L.A. and he studied under Yvonne. So and both are excellent. I never had any work done with Jerome, but Yvonne, oh God, at least 30 sessions, if not more.
I'm very, very jealous of the support group that she has there. I wish there was something. I'm very big into support groups.
Well,
I really
we
wish
have
there was
one.
something like that around here where I'm at and stuff. But I'm very
So
grateful that things like that exist now.
we have one.
And because of people like Yvonne, I'm very happy that things like that exist now.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to expanding my outreach a bit more. And thank you again, Steve, for being so much
Oh,
part of
sure.
that. Absolutely.
Do you know about our support group?
No, I don't
Okay,
have any information.
we do it two ways. We do it online. It's on Zoom, not on StreamYard. It is not recorded and it's private. So anything that's talked about there um, doesn't get shared with the public. I mean, obviously, if you're having the experiences and you're public and you've talked about them, that's fine. But it's private and it's for the protection of the people there because a lot of people are worried about their families or their boss, uh, their employment, uh, finding out about this stuff. So we protect them that way. And the other way is we have them here um, bi-monthly, sometimes every 3 months, but we do have them here at the house, and those are also private, and no outsiders are invited in.
Well, I'm
It's
very
just
excited. I'm very excited for the prospect of it. When I was writing my book Between Worlds: A Life of Abduction, Addiction, and Awakening,
mhm.
I was having some reservations diving into it. Once I came to the conclusion of what needed to happen and why, I still had a reservation. And then I thought, what? Why am I holding back? I mean, with the absurdity of listening to other people and other documentaries on other formats and stuff, sharing my story because of their events that's happening to them, why not put what I need to put down on paper and stuff? And to be able to have a format where you could go Zoom meeting a support group and stuff where you know that you're private and secure and can speak amongst others who have had the same experiences, who aren't going to think ill of you, what a wonderful opportunity that is.
Yeah. Well, back in the 90s when I went public with Yvonne and Whitley and Roger Lear and a lot of other people on national television, being that I worked in Hollywood and was on camera as well as behind camera, it wasn't good.
Oh,
Let's just put it that way. It may be better now, but it wasn't good at all, and it hurt my career a lot. But I felt it was important
Do
to
you do you rem
do
do
what
you
I did.
remember some of the aspects of the ships and stuff while inside? I remember
Well,
that
I never knew if
everything seemed to be anchored. Like the shelf that was a cot came out of the wall. It was anchored to the wall. I remember that there was rounded corners. Nothing really seemed to have seams or,
yeah,
that everything was rounded.
you
And
need to read Susie
the
Hanson's
metal
book.
was gray to silver to black, depending on the directness of the light. But the light didn't have any source,
No,
you
it
know,
doesn't.
and it could be white or it could be gray, depending on the intensity of the light. And I remember the hallways having no seams at all in them. Do you remember? There are other things that I would like to remember more. I definitely would love to talk to Jerome to get some of the finer details out that have just been bugging me. It would be really interesting to speak to someone about that.
Are you
But
in California?
no, I'm in El Paso, Texas. Good
You're
sir,
in
the
El
great state
Paso,
of
Texas.
Texas.
Yeah. Well, they
Absolutely.
do the hypnosis online now,
Yeah.
but it's highly recommended that you have someone in the room with you just in
Right.
case,
Right.
So
Unfortunately, my husband is not open. He loves me. I when I came out with this, I even offered to, if this made him very uncomfortable, to leave. Um, because I have no right bringing this in his life without his permission. And and when I finally came out with it, one of his first questions was, "Well, why didn't you tell me when we were first dating?" I'm like, "Well, I wasn't exactly whole with it
yeah,
myself,
yeah,
I wasn't exactly thinking about what I should tell you on my first date about this,
yeah.
you know."
Hey,
But he's
I have
he's
experience with aliens, so you want to go out? It's not the way, that's totally understandable, Brian.
and I said, but now that I'm about ready to go public with this, I want you to know that you have options, and if my leaving makes your life easier, then I'm happy to do that for you. But I am going to do this. It's not that he doesn't believe, Steve. It's just he can't dwell on the subject. He's just not built for it. He's just not built for it. He can't dwell on it. He believes just fine, and I think that might be the problem. It just scares the hell out of him. And I know that
Yeah,
he's not the only one that feels that way, but I want you to
yeah,
know again about my experiences, though there were some questionable ones in the beginning, especially when it was very strange to me. Now I have such acceptance for what's been going on in my life, and I'm so happy that it is part of my life. And I know, just like with all my other support, it will never go away. I am never will be alone ever again, ever. And that's a
no,
wonderful feeling.
that's for sure. But I would one of the things I would highly recommend to you is that you look into near death experiences, um, because they are connected to this subject.
You think
Very,
so?
very. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Um, and the thing is that humans don't realize that they're not this brain. The brain is our computer. That's how I look at it. That's how a lot of us look at it. And our bodies are not ours. They're just a vehicle for getting around in this reality. But beyond this brain of ours, we have what's called non-local consciousness. This is something that so many people are digging their heels in about right now. But on the other hand,
NLC, non-local consciousness.
lots of scientists are taking it very seriously
Well, it goes
because
right
of
in line with my out of body experiences, because my consciousness makes me aware of both my physical body and what I am out there as well.
it's very similar. What is similar, it's the same thing. When you leave your body, it's the same thing as your body stops functioning, and you're on a table, you're
Mm,
dead, and
mm,
yet you are out of your body, and you can go into the waiting room and you can hear everything that's going on in there. You can see everything that's going on. You can hear everything being said. If your aunt is reading a book, you can recall the book that she was reading and
right.
check it. And when you come back to
I will look
life
into that.
miraculously, yeah, it's a really important aspect. And the other thing
Have you
is,
had a near death experience, Steve?
I have had I had someone in my life, and I've told this story many times on the show, but I had someone in my life when I was I think I was 26 and she was 24, and she's a young girl, and I was crazy about her, but she didn't spend the night one night and stayed at her friend's house. She had a brain aneurysm, but I didn't know anything
Oh,
about it. So she came to me in her death, out of body experience, and pulled me out of my dream and pulled me into where she was to tell
mm.
me that I was right about life after death. She even told me there were aliens, like, she used to make fun of me about all this stuff. And of course, I didn't find out
And
till
then she
later
was
on.
telling you that you were right.
Yeah, and so I didn't find out till later after I got home from a premiere of a movie. My answering machine had all these messages that she had died, and when she had died,
Oh,
um, how she was found was how I saw her in the dream, but I have no way of knowing that.
Mm.
It
My
really
question,
is shocked the
that's a
hell out of
beautiful
me.
story, by the way. That's a very beautiful story,
I did a
and
I did a show about it. It's on the
I have to
channel.
look that one up. I'll have to look that
Yeah.
one up. I actually nearly died. I actually nearly died. I have been aware of when others close to me have died. I've had that happen. Not to
Yeah.
that level. What you just described, that's a beautiful story. That's really
It runs in
beautiful.
my family, that
That's really
ability. So
gorgeous, But no, I had a near death experience, and since we were talking about pre-life, pre-existence, I was just wondering if you'd had a near death experience as well. I had pneumonia, chickenpox, and tonsillitis at the same time when I was a kid,
phew.
and it was very very touch and go there for a while. Um, but I definitely I wrote about that in the book as well. So how are we doing on
Wow.
time?
Uh, we're at exactly an hour. One
Well,
thing I'll say in
what a
closing,
beautiful time to meet you, Steve. Thank you so much. This has been very fulfilling. Thank you.
yeah, let me tell you one thing in closing, and that is that the realm of existence that I have found the visitors occupy a great deal is that same realm as when we're out of our bodies, when we're passed on, and during near death experiences. And it's why they're often seen at that time. So, just some food for thought. I would also recommend, if you're a reader, to read Susie Hanson's book, The Dual Soul Connection. I think
I
you will
will.
if you read through that, you may get triggered. You will find things in there you forgot about, and it'll come right to the surface. She's amazing, and she's a nice friend to have. So, in closing, do you have anything that you would like to share with us before we go off the air here?
Um, I just really think, like I said, it's not just a me experience. I want everybody who's got a question in their heart or their head about this to know that it's an us experience, and that it has everything to do with us and everything that we do with each other and everything that we do in this world. It's how we move forward together, us, and being open minded to this is
Yep.
going to rock your world. You're going to have a wonderful, wonderful, if you just open up to it a bit, and I think this is, with all that's going wrong, there's a lot that's going right as far as higher consciousness of this goes. Our awarenesses are en masse getting larger. And I think this is a wonderful time for that in particular. Keep your eyes, your hearts open, and let's move forward together.
I think that's very good advice. Brian, thank you so much for being brave, coming forward and breaking the silence with us and talking about this. And I'll be sure to put links all through this to your books,
Wonderful.
to your book. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll text you and email you and look for more information. Thank you.
We really want to thank you for subscribing to our channel. And so that you never miss a new episode or a movie, please hit the notification bell. Thank you.